What is going on, Niner faithful? How are we doing Monday? We are locked and loaded. We got a week until the NFL legal tampering period. It's getting close. It's getting real. Let's hit that intro. What is going on, Niner faithful? We are about a week away until the start of the legal negotiating period in the NFL. I hope everybody's doing good. Make sure you hit that like button. But we're getting close to the nitty gritty. So March 13th, 2023, teams can legally negotiate with players and agents beginning at 12 p.m. Eastern. That's 9 Pacific. Many deals will be agreed to and reported during this period before they can be officially announced at the start of the league year. So yes, free agency starts on the 15th, but technically kind of starts the 13th because that's when players can negotiate. Agents are going to be talking. These things are in the building. The teams know what they want to do. You know what I mean? These teams know what they want to do at the end of the day, but they can't make it happen till March 13th. So let's talk about all this good information and rumors and stuff. There's a lot of rumors that are out there circulating regarding the San Francisco 49ers. First and foremost, there was some issues with quarterbacks, right? We talked about the quarterbacks, and we dropped some news about the quarterbacks, specifically veteran quarterbacks. There was an interesting piece of news today on the Rich Eisen show. So Rich Eisen, he kind of was recapping some of the information that he heard across the grapevine. He heard in the circles around the NFL Combine. And he says that, one of the pieces of information involved Phillip Rivers calling both the 49ers and Dolphins about possibly coming out of retirement to help them at quarterback. Neither team took Rivers up on that offer, right? And it's unclear if he'll make any future pitches to return to the activity. So, again, this is interesting because the 49ers needed an emergency quarterback. You're right. They went with Brock Purdy, and after Jimmy Garoppolo went down, and Brock Purdy was the savior, and it kind of tells you that, man, they really trusted Brock. But they went and signed Josh Johnson after Jimmy Garoppolo went down, and that was their backup, their emergency quarterback. And nobody expected Brock Purdy to get hurt. We didn't think that was going to happen, but you never know. If you get down to that position, maybe you need it. Get a better insurance policy if anything were to happen to Brock, which unfortunately it did. So it's interesting to know, Phillip Rivers, he retired in 2020, but he was getting the itch to come back to the NFL field. So he called up the 49ers last year, according to this rumor going on from what Rich Eisen said that he heard, right? So Phillip Rivers called the Dolphins and the 49ers and said, hey, look, maybe I could come back. So it's interesting because had they have had Phillip Rivers in an NFC Championship game, he'd be a better option than Josh Johnson. He would have cooked, right? But maybe the 49ers were like, listen, we love you, Phil. You're a great quarterback. You were a great quarterback in this league. But we're all in on Brock Purdy, who looked damn good last year, right? He came in and he was just like, whoa. He took everybody by surprise. It was just this magical run, and everybody was just so hyped out of their mind with what Brock Purdy did last year. It was an amazing run with Brock. It was crazy. So maybe it all got to them, but we don't know when he reached out. Obviously, we don't know when he reached out. My guess is it was after Jimmy goes down, right? Maybe Jimmy goes down with the injury, and Phillip Rivers that day calls, hey, do you guys need me to help you out? Maybe I could be your savior. But, I mean, it depends on when he called, again, because that's not really specified in this, in this whole little report here that people are talking about today. I mean, if it was right after Miami, it's Phillip Rivers, maybe you give it an option. Maybe you give it a, kick around the tires, because they went and got Josh Johnson that night. Maybe if this was like after 4 or 5 weeks of seeing what Brock Purdy did, you're not going to kick the tires on the guy. You're like, look at what Brock's doing. We don't expect him to not be able to play. Look at what he's doing. We believe in this kid. I mean, even still, Phillip Rivers has had probably a Hall of Fame career. You could argue it. He had a hell of a career. He's top 5 in almost every stat, right? Like passing yards and touchdowns. He's up there on a lot of these stats. Top 10. He's in a lot of stats. Obviously, he played for a long time, but he was a good quarterback. I mean, he'd definitely be a better option than Josh Johnson. But it's interesting. Again, that was last year. And at the end of the day, I mean, it is what it is. It's all done. But it's just interesting to hear, these rumors and these reports after it's done, because it's like you look back and you're like, what else did these teams hear? What else do they hear behind the scenes? What else do they hear? Right? What else do they hear? Very interesting, But yeah, so Terrence says, could have had Rivers for a little of nothing, but Niners kept Josh Johnson. Yeah, again, you never know what's going behind the scenes. So I'm sure they're getting calls from players. They're calling players. There's due diligence all over the place. You just never know what is going on, right, behind the scenes. So Alberto says, if Purdy doesn't come back this season, who's your 3 quarterbacks that you'd like to see? That's a good question, man. I hope that Brock Purdy comes back, because he's definitely one of the guys I want to see come back. We heard this morning that there was some surgery updates with Brock Purdy, right? Brock Purdy got his surgery rescheduled, and it's Friday. Initially this morning it was Wednesday, and all of a sudden it was Friday. So it was like, which one is it? But it was kind of weird, right? When you see the news, like initially Mike Silver reported it was Wednesday, and now it's Friday. So people always get worried with these things. It's worst case scenario. People their mind's going to go to worst case scenario. But it's a good question. I hope Brock's one of those guys, that he's one of those 3 quarterbacks. But if he doesn't come back, that's tough, man. Trey Lance is the guy then, and he's going to be QB1, and hopefully he can handle it, and he could maybe, rise above, and I know the 49ers maybe want to speed the process along with Trey Lance to get it. He hasn't really played much in these last few years. He really hasn't done much in the Niners uniform, and the 49ers have this great team sitting there that could go to a Super Bowl, right? But is Trey Lance good enough to take him there? I think he could. I mean, Brock Purdy came in. Obviously, he wowed everybody, but I feel like Trey could have a run, if he can kind of figure everything out. But again, it's developmental. Can he hit the development? Can he hit the blocks running and become that guy that we all hope he can? So it's tough. Obviously, Trey's one of those guys. I wouldn't hate Marcus Mariota. I think he's the guy that you could come in and, I mean, yeah, I like Mariota. I think he could come in and Kyle would be able to do something with him. So that's 2. But you got to remember, there's a salary cap. You can't spend money on every quarterback. And again, if Brock's out, you get a guy like Mariota who could probably start if worst case scenario happens. Then you got to go to QB3, and that's your 3rd string. Now that your QB3 is like ultimate emergency, but in the 49ers situation, QB3 sometimes could be QB2, could be sometimes QB1. You never know. And it's not the first year this has happened. They went through years where Jimmy went down. They had to play Nick Mullins. They had to play C.J. Beathard. They played them all, right? So this is nothing new for the 49ers. I do like Mariota. I mean, you can't get Mariota and Jacoby Brissett. You can't get Mariota and Baker. You're going to have to get another tier down. So you got Trey, you got Mariota, and then who's the 3rd guy? Maybe we mentioned this name the other day with Akash. Kind of like Colt McCoy. He's no nonsense, a veteran. He could come in and he'd be your 3rd string quarterback. I think that's a perfect situation. Colt McCoy, maybe. I mean, he's better than Josh Johnson. And then you draft a guy. I still think you got to draft a guy. I like what I saw at Stetson Bennett, but I think he upgraded himself in this draft. And I feel like we may not be able to get a Stetson Bennett because he really did well at this weekend. But there are some options in terms of rookies, so maybe you do get a rookie, but then he'd be your 4th dire straits emergency type situation. So it's interesting. It's hard to understand who the heck's going to be walking through this door. I feel a lot of it has to do with exactly what we talked about just a few minutes ago is Brock Purdy's surgery. That's going to dictate a lot. And I think Kyle kind of hinted towards that, and John Lynch very much kind of hinted towards that Brock Purdy is really going to kind of dictate what they're going to do here. So Friday, the big day, the big surgery day, and once they know the procedure, that's really going to be able to kind of determine who we're going to get, go after. So I feel like it still depends, So, but yeah, those are the guys I'd probably bring in. I get Trey Lance. I like Mariota. I don't think that what was his name? Colt McCoy's a horrible option. If he's your third string quarterback, that's not a bad third string quarterback. Now, if he's your QB1, you got some issues. So, T Money says Lance is going to have to show up and show out. That's it, 100%. At the end of the day, man, at the end of the day, this man, Trey Lance, has to go out there and prove himself, and he's going to get the golden opportunity. He's going to be the guy. I feel a lot of people are worried because he hasn't, gone out there and done much. He hasn't shown us much. And it's just this what if, what if, what if. We don't know. We don't know. I honestly don't know what to expect out of Trey Lance. We don't. None of us do. The 49ers, their front office, their coaching staff, they see him every day practice. They know more than us. So I think if they feel confident in him, the quarterbacks they bring in will tell us everything we need to know. The quarterbacks that they bring in the next week or so, that'll pretty much dictate what we need to know about Trey Lance. Is he ready? Is he going to be ready? Is it going to be a competition? Is it going to be a big name quarterback or a bigger name than we normally think? Or if it's just a guy that's just a guy, like, okay, he's a backup quarterback, whatever. You don't expect much out of him. So it's going to be interesting to see where we go. I really hope that Trey gets, out there and just attacks. I think we all do. We all want this team to win, first and foremost. We want them to win a Super Bowl. And in order for them to win a Super Bowl, the 49ers got to win games. And if Trey Lance wins games and he does great, then that's good for the team. And I want to see Trey succeed because if Trey succeeds, the team succeeds 100%. That is it right there. If Trey Lance succeeds, the team succeeds. And that's honestly where my head's at. Whoever's quarterback, I'm cool with, honestly. I mean, you don't want it to be a guy like Josh Johnson. That's dire straits. But, I mean, I'm talking in terms of starting quarterback. You want to make sure your starting quarterback has your support. And I think Trey can be the guy. I think he can be the guy. So, we'll see. My man, Hey Peter Parker says, wait until that footage gets out of Trey throwing again. Yeah, you know what? When Trey starts getting that footage out, when we see that training camp footage, everybody's going to start falling in love again. I feel like. I just think it's a matter of time. I really think it's a matter of time. Once he gets out there this year, I feel like he's got everything to gain, and he's just going to be rip-roaring and hyped up and excited. I really think that Trey's going to come out and be nice, be really nice with it in training camp. I really do. He's got nothing to lose, and I think that right now he's going to go out there with a chip on his shoulder because everybody's doubting him, and I think he's going to look amazing. And if he does it, then we all better hope that Brock Purdy comes back in a timely fashion. But again, we'll see where that surgery takes us on Friday. So we'll see. There's a couple other things we can get to. So obviously, quarterback rumors. We did talk about, who do I like? I like Mariota and those guys we mentioned. But the 49ers have been linked to certain players over the last couple of days. Obviously, it's a rumor season. People are going to pump out rumors and news and smoke screens and this and that. And it's up to you to believe it, up to you to do your due diligence and research. And it's up to the 49ers to tell us what's true down the line, when they meet with us again, with the media in a few months or weeks, whatever, when they meet with those guys and, we hear all the questions that they ask them and we get to kind of finally hear their take on it. People are going to ask, were you in on this player? Were you looking for Baker? Were you looking for this player? Who are you looking at? I'm sure they'll give us some answers at that point. But right now it's all speculation. So we have heard Baker Mayfield. We have heard Mason Rudolph. We've heard Jacoby Brissett. We've heard Andy Dalton. We've heard Matt Ryan. Those are the names that we've actually heard. Whether they're true or not, again, it's rumors. It's smoke season. I mean, those are all decent quarterbacks. That's what you expect out of a veteran backup. That's what you're going to expect. You're not expecting, Lamar Jackson or, Aaron Rodgers to walk through that door, but you can expect a guy like Jacoby Brissett or Baker Mayfield and Mason Rudolph. And now there's a subset of guys. There's a group of players that they've, lumped together, that there's names out there. Now the 49ers, if they really are looking, it's up to them. It's their due diligence to go out there and pick the best guy they feel can be part of the script or the scheme. Kyle Shanahan knows what works for him. He knows what guys fit. So if he's looking at Matt Ryan, if he's looking at Andy Dalton, if he's looking at these players, then they got to realize, okay, one of these guys is going to be the guy that could come in an emergency situation and win games. Or if the case is our players get hurt, he could be that guy that comes in and starts and wins some games. So I don't think it's a horrible list of players. I mean, I think the worst one out of that group, obviously, is Mason Rudolph. I definitely would be – I'd cringe if they get Mason Rudolph. I don't think they'll get Mason Rudolph. I hope they don't get Mason Rudolph. But, I mean, if that's the guy they want, that's the guy they want. I guess he's not as bad as Josh Johnson, right? That's what we always say. So, I mean, it's not a high That's not really much to go off of if your expectations are at least he's better than Josh Johnson. You want a decent guy. You want a guy that's going to be able to win games. Worst case scenario if he has to play. So that's the guy I don't want out of that list. I wouldn't mind Andy Dalton. I think he could come in and win some games, if he needed to. I think all of them could. Matt Ryan, though, maybe is another guy that I'd probably not really want on this team. He's kind of a shell of himself. I know he knows the system. He's played with Kyle for, some time when he was with Atlanta, but I don't know. I think he's way past his prime. But any of those guys obviously fit the bill of what the 49ers are looking for. Baker's not bad, but I don't know if he really wants to be this QB3, QB2 type guy. I think Baker still wants to try to get a starting job. You know what I mean? So we'll see. I don't know. I don't know. Maddie, my man, hey, Peter Parker says, Matty Ice is washed. Debbie says, no Baker, please no. Jason says, I like Heineke. I like Heineke. Not a bad option if he's available. I think he'd be okay. We've talked about him before. Hey, Peter Parker says, I'd rather stick with 2 quarterbacks than sign Shake and Bake or Rudolph. Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, again, not everybody's going to like all these options. The 49ers are going to do what's best for them, and they got to, think of winning a Super Bowl, and they got to bring in a guy they feel, at the end of the day, they feel is going to win games for them if they're in that position. Hey, Goated says, Baker might outplay Trey. Wow, that's a... I don't know. What do you guys think? You think Baker would outplay Trey? I think he'd come into camp with a chip on his shoulder, and he'd really try to outperform Trey, and maybe he can look better than him in practice or training camp. Baker Mayfield's been in the league for a couple of years, right? Trey Lance, he's been in the league for a couple of years, but he hasn't played games. I mean, Baker could look the part in training camp. So I don't think that's a far stretch. I know some of you guys might think it's a hot take. I think he might outplay him in training camp or practice. He might outshine him. I don't think Baker's a great quarterback. I don't think he's, an elite guy. I think he's average at best. But I think in that situation, he may know how to practice in the NFL more than Trey Lance would. I mean, obviously, he's got the experience. But overall, ceiling, talent, athleticism, we all know Trey Lance is a better quarterback in terms of his potential. But can he harness it? Can he reach it? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big Baker Mayfield fan, but I do think that he could come in and if he had to win games, he could. I don't think he'd be able to be this elite starting quarterback. But if a few games, 4 or 5 games, if he had to come in, I think he'd be okay. He'd be serviceable. I don't know. Again, he showed last year that he was able to come in, emergency situation, and the team seems to like him. I heard reports today, I think Jordan Schultz from The Score, he mentioned that today that, hey, the team really liked him with the Rams. They want to bring him back as a backup, unless that's, a report or smoke, to get the Niners to bite and say, oh, we got to pay this guy because the Rams want him. Because there's sometimes this little ploy, little leverage, tactics to make other teams spend money on a guy. Maybe the Rams don't really like him. Maybe the Rams don't like him, and it's just a cap report. But I do think that the Rams genuinely would bring him back as a backup. So we'll see. We'll see. Sad Niner fan says Baker made OBJ look like a washed wide receiver. I mean, yeah, 100%. Again, he's not the greatest quarterback in the world, but he's better than Josh Johnson, right? That's what we all want. I mean, he's not a horrible backup quarterback, I think. But I think Baker's still going to try to go for, a starting job. But we'll see. Again, there's definitely a group of players that they're looking at, according to these reports over the last few days, and we're about to find out, hopefully soon. I just want to know. I got to know, Kyle, John. I need to know from these guys, so it'll be interesting. A couple other news and notes from today. There was some stuff from Matt Barrows. He kind of mentioned that Robbie Gould still might come back. Sports Dude said that, so bye-bye Robbie Gould, right? So according to Matt Barrows, he was on with Larry Krueger. He was also on the Murph and Mac show. And he mentioned, hey, Robbie Gould might be back. He still might be back. It might be a negotiation tactic, 50-50 chance of him still coming back. There are some reports out there of people saying they can still see Robbie coming back. Tomorrow's the franchise tag option deadline. Sorry, the deadline to franchise tag someone. I don't think they do it, but it's an option. It ain't over till it's over. Like tomorrow, if the 49ers want to tag him, they're going to pay him up, but that's a lot of money. Like to keep Robbie Gould, it's going to cost you $5-6 million a year. But they can go younger. And I think Robbie wants to genuinely be back home in Chicago, close to his family, because he plays out here during the season. He lives out here during the season. He stays in a hotel. He's nowhere near his family. And I think he's a 40-year-old man. He wants to be by his family. He wants to spend the last couple of years with his family. And I don't blame him, man. I get it. I'm a father. I understand that. You got to do what you got to do. You got to be close to your family, and it's probably tough on him staying out here. And I get he's a great player. He's a clutch player. But man, living in a hotel for the NFL season, no matter how much money you get when you got a family, it's tough on you mentally. So, um, yeah, man. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think that Gold is trying to do any negotiation tactics. I really think he generally is going to play somewhere closer to home. I think he's done with the Niners. Not that he's done with it because he hates us. He just wants to live closer to home. My man, Geno Smith, he got that bag today, huh? Gino really got paid to get boxed by us again. John says Kyle and John are in no position to lose at multiple positions in a win now mode. Yeah, you gotta stack these positions. They gotta make sure that if they lose some key players, that they can replace them very good. And I know they love to, use their younger players, next man up type guy. But whoever they, replace with the players they're gonna lose, I really hope that they're able to come in and be quality starters. Typically they are, right? They've been able to bring in great young players. Talanoa Hufanga comes in, he replaced Jaquiski Tart. So they've had these instances of players that can really step up and deliver. So we'll see how it goes. But I do want to make sure they bring in some solid elite players. If they're going to lose some elite players, you can't have that step off of talent. You can't have that drop off of talent, So it's going to be an interesting offseason and free agency next week. It's definitely I can't wait anymore, man. I see all these rumors and all this speculation, and I'm just like, let's figure out what the hell is going to happen. So, let's see, 48 million. He's made staying in a hotel is weird. I mean, I don't think it's weird that he's mad that he's doing free agency. Or sorry, I don't think it's weird that he's mad that he's staying in a hotel. Like honestly, man, I get it. I get where Robbie's coming from. It's a business too, though. So the Niners can go get a young buck. I just hope that they don't get a kicker that's gonna hurt them in the long run. And again, Robbie's getting old too. You can't expect him to be here forever. He's 40. You expect maybe 2 more years of his career, and that's bad. That's it, man. Got to get someone young eventually to replace him. Why not start now? So my man T Money says the John and Kyle are gonna have to break the bank this year. Maybe chip in from their own pocket. We need to get these guys a Super Bowl way over. Yeah, man. Maybe they're gonna have to pull out their own checks to write some money for these guys because I mean, there's so many free agents that we could definitely use. We've heard some names out there. Jeffrey Simmons is a guy that deleted his Instagram. Titans could trade him, and there's other players. There's Jesse Bates. There's so many good players on the market that I'm like, man, could we get these guys? But again, it's tough because the 49ers have paid players over the years. They've spent some big money on guys. It's not that they haven't spent, but eventually you can't keep restructuring everybody. So we'll see what happens. I'm definitely excited to see what the hell's gonna happen because it's just rumors right now. Would you bring in a guy like Bud Dupree? Yeah, they not. Texans cut him. Texans fire sale. They're just. Rand Carthon came in and he says, "All right, you gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta go. Derrick Henry, you might gotta go. We're gonna trade you maybe." So I would love Bud Dupree. I think he'd come in and be a flat out monster for this defense. There's a lot of players that I would love for this team to sign. But again, free agency, it's fun to think and dream about those guys, but there is a salary cap, and it's frustrating, So John says we drove downfield to kick field goals. I cannot imagine driving downfield and missing field goals now. And that's the worry about losing Robbie, right? I think that's the big worry is, okay, when the 49ers were at their worst, they were at least kicking field goals. You knew you can rely on Robbie to kick you that field goal. And Kyle wasn't as aggressive sometimes because he knew, Robbie's going to kick this field goal, whatever. We won't go for it. We're not going to be as aggressive. Maybe it's going to force him to be a little bit more aggressive, because he don't have that automatic. You don't know if you have an automatic kicker. But maybe you can get a younger guy that can kick from 50 yards, right? Because Robbie's range is a little, over the years, it kind of died down, right? And his accuracy kind of died down a little bit. But Robbie Gould was clutch. In his zone, in his sweet spot, you knew he was going to hit it, especially in the playoffs. So it's interesting. I agree with you, though, John. I don't want to see this team drive all the way down to miss a field goal. That would make me sick because how many times have we drove down just to kick a field goal? But if we drive all the way down and we can't even make that field goal, then it's disgusting. Oh man, Brian, what's up, Brian? He says Robbie did this before. He has only 1 to 2 more years. I think he mentioned it somewhere. I can't remember if it was an interview or he posted it or he tweeted. I know he did say somewhere. I don't know if it was podcast. I can't remember where I heard it, but he says he feels like he has 2 more good years left in him, and he wants to chase some records. So we'll see. We shall see. So, Rivers turned down. Let me see some of these topics I wrote down. So, Phillip Rivers, we talked about that. Purdy, the surgery, we know about that. QB rumors, we can sit here and talk about that all day. A few more things I want to bring up. So, Frank Clark, they're going to probably get rid of him in Kansas City. He's going to be a guy that they get rid of. Frank Clark, edge rusher. And I know if you're a 49er fan, that name probably makes you sick, just like Richard Sherman did a couple of years back before he was a Niner as a Seahawk, because he's a rival. You hate, he talks so much trash against the 49ers. But Frank Clark might be an option for the 49ers to go and get in free agency. I don't know. What do you guys think? Frank Clark to the Niners, I know he's got a weird, it's an awkward relationship, 49ers and the Chiefs. We can't stand him, but Frank Clark's not bad. He's gotten better over the years. Or he's pretty consistent over the years, I should say, at least. He's not a bad edge rusher. You throw him on the other side of Nick Bosa, he's a good veteran. He could come in and do some damage. They need to get some edge rush help. I don't know. It might be an option. He doesn't like us. We don't like him. I agree. We don't like him. He doesn't like us. But I feel like that's the same situation Richard Sherman was in, right? Before, he was on the rival, the Seahawks. We hated him. He hated us. But business, money talks. I don't know. Hendricks makes a good point, though. I don't know if the Niners sign him because of his character. And the 49ers will definitely look into that, because kind of a sketchy character type guy, right? His whole career, he's been labeled as this bad character dude. 49ers really care about that. About the character of a player. Will he be able to fit into the locker room? They've made some mistakes in the past, and they've kind of cleaned that up, right? Reuben Foster rings a bell. So I don't know. If they don't bring him in, it's probably a character thing and maybe money. But if he has good character and if he can mesh and he can jive well with this team, I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate bringing in, Frank Clark. Again, it's just someone out there to think of. You got to realize that they need to make sure that they bolster this front line and D line and everything out there. So definitely just someone to think about. Just a rumor. You never know. Who knows? It would be weird. It definitely would be weird, because Frank Clark, the Niners, you don't think that's a relationship that you'd ever, expect. We'll see how that goes. Last thing I want to bring up, we're going to make this kind of short today. I've been all over Instagram and social media today, so I got to make some dinner. But last thing I want to bring up, Jimmy Ward, he was live today. I don't know if you guys caught his Instagram live, man. Whenever he goes live, it's great. It's good news. It's good stuff, man. Jimmy Ward, he cleared up. Let me see. He cleared up some things. VZ says, so I'm late. Did you hear what Jimmy Ward said about Mosley going with him? Yeah, so let's talk about Jimmy Ward. So he was live on his Instagram, and he talked about the nickel cornerback situation, because a couple weeks ago, I think people maybe didn't understand what he was saying, because he says that he, right? When we heard the story, it was made it sound like, okay, we think that Jimmy Ward just didn't want to play nickel. And he says it wasn't the case that he didn't want to play nickel. It was the fact that he told him in the beginning of the season, before training camp started, hey, maybe you start giving me some reps. Make me practice nickel. Because he saw the writing was on the wall. He knew K'Wan Williams was gone. Okay, K'Wan was gone. This was before the draft. This was like before they went and drafted Womack. He says they got Womack. They brought in Lenore, right? And started putting him in the slot. So they were getting these younger guys their reps. So he's all right, cool. I'm safety. This is what you paid me for. I get it. I like it. This is where I want to be. But then, of course, Gibson comes in, and all of a sudden, they just were like, oh, we need you to play nickel in the middle of the season. And that's where he was like, okay, look, dude, you're putting me in a position where I'm going to fail. I don't have any film on tape. I'm a free agent. If you guys don't bring me back, I'm going to show him this film, and it's no good. Obviously, he's tough. He figured it out, and he worked hard, and he was like, I figured it out. But at the end of the day, he knows he's a safety. That's why he was saying, look, I don't want to play this. He didn't want to have bad film. He was trying to tell him, like, yo, he knows there's an issue at nickel. Put me in at nickel. Put me in training camp. At least he would have got the reps instead of just throwing him into the fire and playing a whole new position, where he's supposed to be at safety, but all of a sudden he plays nickel. So that's where he was coming from. I get that. Now, he did mention a lot of free agents. He was like, it's going to be expensive, to bring in a guy like Jesse Bates. That's the guy he mentioned. because he's going to be an upper echelon safety. And he goes, just, you never know. There's going to be players you're going to have to lose. He goes, Mike McGlinchey, you don't know if they're going to pay him. He says, Robbie Gould, you're probably losing him. He says, Aziz. He said, Aziz, you're losing Aziz. He says, Mosley, he goes, he's the wild card. He goes, Emmanuel Mosley is the wild card. You don't know if you're going to be able to pay him. He goes, because there are going to be teams that offer him money. That's what he said. He goes, there's going to be teams that offer Manny Mosley more than the 49ers may offer him, right? We all know Jimmy Ward is probably going to get more money than the 49ers can offer him, but that's not the only player. Teams may be willing to pay Emmanuel Mosley a little bit more than the 49ers to get them on their team. Obviously, he's a good player when he's healthy. The issue is he's coming off an ACL. Will a team gamble and pay him more than the 49ers because he's coming off an injury? I don't know. But he did say Emmanuel Mosley is a wild card. Expect him to get paid a little bit more than you think he would in this situation. So that was kind of surprising to hear. So, and then Hendricks, he did say that he said it's going to be hard to replace me. So he did say that. He says, if I go and they don't bring me back, he goes, it's going to be very hard to replace him. And he explained it why. He goes, because he played so many different roles on this defense. And he was kind of that, that captain, the leader. He hits hard. He was able to cover. He was able to rush. He can play that veteran leader role. And he's right. He played a lot of hats on this team. He was a leader. He could hit you hard. He could cover. He was a very good player in a lot of different aspects. And he's a leader. So I don't want to lose Jimmy, but we're probably going to, and I know a lot of people say, they did replace him. They got Gibson and this and that. It's tough, though, man. It's a tough situation because, yes, he did, in a sense, get replaced last year. But do you see what he did last year? He was able to come in, play nickel. He figured it out. The guy's important. He's a good veteran. I still think he's just this solid player that can still, add a couple more years of good starts under his belt, a couple more years of, solid play. But I get it. We might go younger. He isn't getting any, younger himself. So it's tough. I feel a lot of people don't respect Jimmy. He keeps it 100. I know he's been through some injuries. I respect the time he's been here, but I ultimately think he's done. It is unfortunate. So, I mean, Pocket says he was getting toasted at nickel, but he said it himself. That's not his position. You know what I mean? So he was playing out of position, but he still played better than towards the end of the season. He got a lot better at that nickel spot. Was he 100%? No. Again, because he said it too. He did it, and that's what he said. He goes, I don't want to put bad film out there. I'm a free agent. Show me, train me now. So if it comes down to this situation, an emergency situation, because he knows injuries are happening, that I won't look like a busted up nickel quarterback, which people thought he was, but he never really played that position. So I don't know. I get where Jimmy's coming from. It sounded like he was upset, but he wasn't. He was just trying to clear his name, because people are going to insinuate XYZ. But I don't know. Kyle and John will be damned if they let him leverage them on Instagram. Well, they mentioned it. Lynch mentioned it before, in his press conference last week. So it was interesting to hear Jimmy Ward come right back. He came right back and said, let me clear this nickel situation up. And he said, too, in his live today, he said, I'm okay with paying either one. He goes, I'd prefer to play safety. I'll play either one. But the money's got to be right. And he's right. You got to pay the man what he's worth. I think it ultimately comes down to the money for Jimmy Ward. It ultimately comes down to the money, the green for Jimmy. That's what he wants. He wants to get paid. I mean, that's the sense you get. That's the vibe you get when you hear Jimmy Ward talk about free agency. This is it, Hendricks. Business side, it's gruesome, man. People are going to sound bitter. People are going to sound this and that, but their team wants leverage. The players want leverage, and we don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. There's so much different dynamics. You can only take what everybody says with a grain of salt, because I'm sure the front office has a way they see it, their perception of the situation, Jimmy Ward's perception of the situation. It's an interesting thing. I hope Jimmy Ward goes somewhere and gets a lot of money and plays well. I want him to play well. I don't want him to get hurt or anything. I wish him all the best. I would love to see him come back, but I don't think he's coming back. So, Randy says, I love healthy Jimmy. He's just been hurt half his career. That's it, 100%. Best ability is availability, and unfortunate through the beginning of his career, wasn't available. So it is unfortunate, but we'll see what happens. And I don't know. Again, 1 week away from the legal tampering period. 1 week away from legal tampering. I can't wait. I wonder what we're gonna do, man. There's gonna be a lot of rumors in the next few days. You guys have a good rest of your night. I love you. Bang bang. Nana gang. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. Hit that like button, ladies and gentlemen. Helps the channel grow. You know the vibes.